A routine inspection of a Grumman A-6E Intruder plane during the Persian Gulf War almost resulted in a fatal accident. This video shows the moment Petty Officer J.D. Bridges was sucked into an engine while checking the launch mechanism of the aircraft. The flight deck crew member was stuck inside the engine intake for 3 minutes, but managed to come out practically unscathed. But how did Officer Bridges survive? It was only thanks to a series of lucky strokes and a convenient feature of the engine design. The jet. The Grumman A-6E Intruder was an all-weather attack aircraft developed in the late 1950s. It was used by the Navy for over 4,700 combat sorties during Operation Desert Storm. The aircraft also served through the Vietnam War and engaged in combat over Iraq, Lebanon, and Libya. The Pratt & Whitney J-52 engines of the Intruder were mounted to the airframe, and the intakes were only a short height above the flight deck. According to experts, the engine of the plane can generate up to 9,300 pounds of thrust at full power, twice the power of the most powerful tornado. However, during safety checks, the J-52s of the Intruder did not operate at full strength. The incident. The incident took place past 3:40 on the morning of February 20th, 1991. The USS Theodore Roosevelt was one of the carriers used by the US and the coalition forces for launching airstrikes during the Persian Gulf War. On the deck was a crewman making sure that the launch bar of a Grumman A-6E Intruder was seated in the catapult shuttle. After checking the hookup process, he signaled to the catapult operator that the pilot could throttle the aircraft's engines. He then exited the area, and the pilot got ready for launch. Petty Officers J.D. Bridges and Michael McDonald were responsible for the next step of the process, checking the holdback bar, launch bar, and catapult shuttle. After their inspection, they were supposed to let the pilot know if anything required adjustment or was unsafe. Otherwise, the pilot would have increased the engine power to proceed with the control surfaces check. This video shows how Officer Bridges entered the area in an almost straight position. However, the procedure states that crewmen are supposed to crouch while preparing for a catapult launch at the flight deck. That was an especially important role when operating the Intruder, since the engine's intakes weren't very far above the ground. While Bridges was walking next to the portside engine intake of the Intruder, he got sucked in by the engine in a split second. The jet engine immediately ingested Bridges' goggles, helmet, and float coat. This provoked a massive flame to come from the exhaust. As soon as it happened, the catapult officer signaled the pilot to shut down the engines. The pilot had heard the engine rattling from the foreign object damage and was already powering down the aircraft. Stroke of luck. Officer Bridges survived the ordeal with nothing more than some minor injuries and a headache. He was lucky his helmet and float coat were sucked in first and caused enough damage to the engine. Thanks to the alert that was activated, the pilot quickly cut the throttle. By the time the officer's body reached the engine, the most dangerous parts had already been destroyed. If Bridges had reached the blades before his equipment did, he surely would have been killed. Bridges also had a second stroke of luck. Daniel P. Streckfuss, an officer who witnessed the incident, told the Daily Mail that Bridges survived thanks to the design of the engine. The Pratt & Whitney J-52 that sucked the officer in has a large cone built in, which protrudes from the Intruder between the engine and the first stage compressor fan blades. Even though the pilot cut the throttles, the engine was still spinning due to the centrifugal force. That would have been enough to kill him. Fortunately, the first body part of Bridges to get sucked in was his arm. That got him stuck between the engine's nose cone and the intake and prevented him from reaching the blades. It took 3 minutes for the engine to come to a full stop. Officer Bridges untangled himself from the intake and came out walking. He suffered a broken collarbone, a blown eardrum, and cuts caused by shrapnel. After the incident, he was reassigned. Even though Bridges survived, the Navy still uses this video to teach a lesson to flight deck crew members on what not to do while on deck.